All right, I believe we're ready to open the meeting. Good morning, everyone, on this beautiful spring day in Hutchinson, Kansas. So I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Tuesday, May 16th, 2017 meeting. Please call roll.
Pyrus de Carvalho.
Here.
Soldner.
Here.
Inskeep.
Here.
Deckant.
Here.
Daveline.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, Darrell. How are you, sir? Pastor Darrell Peterson.
I'm fine, and you all doing
Nice
good?
to see you, sir. Fine, thank you.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly most gracious Father, what an honor it is to come before you, and Father, just thank you for this city that, Father, they still believe in prayer. Thank you for that. Thank you, Lord God, as we lift up the council members this morning, that, Father, we just thank you for the godly wisdom they need to have. And, Father, for the right decisions, right choices, and how it affects the city and the image of the city, Father. And we just thank you, Father, for our leadership. We thank you, Father, for our fire department, our police department. And, Father, we just pray blessings over them and divine protection over them as well. And I thank you for this meeting today, that, Father, wisdom will understand and move forward. And, Father, it'll be a blessing to the community and blessing to the people. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Next item.
Item 4A, Certified Municipal Clerk Award.
Good morning, John Deardoff, City Manager. Council, just wanted to take a moment this morning to recognize our City Clerk, Karen Weltmar, for her obtaining the designation of a Certified Municipal Clerk, the CMC. I'd ask Karen if you would come on up. This certification is sponsored by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. Certification is a declaration that Karen is proficient in her position and has demonstrated mastery of administrative skills critical to good government related to city operations and city clerk functions. Actually, Karen's been working on this for 4 years, so it's a lot of work. She's attended a series of educational opportunities over the past 3 years. It also, not only the educational side, but you have to have a certain number of years of experience as a city clerk. So wanted to present this to her. Karen, congratulations on obtaining your CMC.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. You can say a few words, Karen, if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a few
Thank you,
words.
Karen, for all your great years of service to the city. We appreciate it very much.
John, you must be one heck of a taskmaster. You wouldn't even let her stick around.
I didn't tell her she needed to be in there.
It's quite an accomplishment.
All right, next item.
Item 5A, Proclamation for Community Supporting Breastfeeding.
If I could invite Brenda Bandy, who's the Executive Director for the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition, and Annette Roberson up to the podium, please. Good morning, ladies. How are you? Good to see you all. Thank you for being here this morning. Good morning. We'll present the proclamation to you, and then if any and all of you would like to make some comments, you're certainly welcome to do so. So, very good. Whereas the people of Hutchinson, Kansas are deserving of good health, and human milk is the preferred and most appropriate source of nutrition for infants, adapting over time to meet the changing needs of the growing infant. And whereas breastfeeding is a proven primary prevention strategy protecting both infants and mothers from a host of chronic and acute diseases and conditions and building a foundation for lifelong health and wellness, and the act of breastfeeding builds a strong emotional connection between the mother and infant and a bond which lasts a lifetime. Whereas employers that provide workplace lactation support experience an impressive return on investment, including lower health care costs, absenteeism, and turnover rates, and improved morale, job satisfaction, and productivity. Whereas breastfeeding is economical, providing its benefits at little or no cost and providing a safe, renewable food source, especially critical during natural disaster and emergency situations, and all major medical authorities recommend that mothers breastfeed exclusively for 6 months and continue breastfeeding for at least the first year of a child's life, yet breastfeeding rates continue to fall short of the nation's healthy people objectives. And whereas the U.S. Surgeon General has issued the Surgeon General's call to action to support breastfeeding, calling on healthcare providers, employers, insurers, policymakers, researchers, and the community at large to support mothers in reaching their personal breastfeeding goals. And whereas Hutchinson has an active and effective local breastfeeding coalition and support group, and the hospital in Hutchinson is committed to providing maternity care practices supportive of breastfeeding as evidenced by their participation in the High Five for Mom and Baby Quality Improvement Program. And whereas Hutchinson has 25 public establishments supportive of mothers needing to nurse in public as evidenced by their participation in the Breastfeeding Welcome Here program, 11 employers who have received the Breastfeeding Employee Support Award in recognition of their high-level support of their breastfeeding employees, and 44 child care providers who have completed a course in how to support the breastfeeding mother and family. And whereas Hutchinson has built a culture of breastfeeding support through the above activities and has met all criteria established by the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition to be recognized as a community supporting breastfeeding. Now, therefore, I, John Daveline, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim Hutchinson as a community supporting breastfeeding as designated by the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition and encourage all citizens to support breastfeeding families wherever and whenever possible. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to say some comments?
Yes. So I'll have you guys stay up here for this. And so I'm Brenda Bandy with the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition as their executive director, and I want to congratulate the city of Hutchinson for achieving this designation, the significance of which is you're one of only 15 communities in Kansas to have met this criteria. The criteria really recognizes a community that supports breastfeeding beyond the obvious supports of the hospital, which your hospital's been doing fantastic things for a while. Your health department has been very supportive for a while, but we also pulled in support groups. You have a very thriving La Leche League group as well, and you have businesses that are supportive of breastfeeding. To have 11 employers that have received awards and recognition, your community hospital is one of them. We're beginning to work with your school district to achieve the similar award. We look forward to working with the city to have them also be an award-winning employer as well. I know that all of these businesses are doing great things already, but we like to recognize them for what they're doing. Because we recognize when a mom leaves the hospital, still breastfeeding, she enters the community. And here in Hutchinson, we know that she's going to be supported by the community. She's going to enter businesses that welcome her to sit down and nurse if she needs to. And she's going to return to work with an employer that understands that she's going to need time and space to express during the workday. So Hutchinson, I commend you for what you've done in weaving all of these pieces together. So you join the other 15 communities that have achieved this prestigious designation. So thank you for what you're doing. And the women behind us are the local efforts. We're just the statewide organizations, but it's been the work of Annette Roberson, who's been our local coordinator on the ground here, and the members of the coalition, Heather, and the others. You want to introduce yourself?
Oh, Jennifer Garland. I'm with the Reno County Early Head Start.
Mhm.
And I'm Margaret Peter, and I was Annette's field instructor for her bachelor's in social work.
This was part of her
This was
project
part
for
of
that
her
as well.
project.
And Head Start and Early Head Start is one of our award-winning employers. So they not only care for children, the breastfed babies in their care, but their own employees as well. So really a model business and community partner. So thank you for being here for that. So again, congratulations, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next item.
Item 6, oral communications from the audience.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come to the podium and offer any comments related to the Hutchinson community? Please introduce yourself if you would.
Good morning, Rod Zook from 120 West 18th. Even though I'm no longer coaching, track is still very near and dear to my heart, and the NJCAA National Track Meet is going to be here this weekend, starting Thursday. Even John Deardoff and I were talking just a little bit ago, even though it's a shorter duration, only about 4 days, still brings in between 800 and 900 athletes that will be staying in Hutchinson motels and eating in the area and things like that. It's not a big draw like the tournament is, but it still brings a lot of people here to the city. See a lot of not only some of the best runners in the nation, some of the best runners in the world. A lot of junior college athletes, Tyson Gay, Veronica Campbell, others like that, all ran at this meet at one time or another and went on to the Olympics and become great runners. So you're going to see a lot of great track athletes this weekend. Again, about between 800 and 900. Starts on Thursday night and concludes on Saturday afternoon. If you get a chance, come on out and see it. It's going to be great.
At Gowan's?
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it very much.
We will hope the weather cooperates.
Yeah, may not.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm Chuck Pyle. We have two homes in Hutch. We live in Countryside, and we have a home at 3252 North Halstead. Well, we've been at the Halstead home for about 3 years now, and one thing has become glaringly obvious, especially since my wife and I just about got killed at the intersection the other day, and I thought, this has happened before. We've had some close calls at 30th and Halstead, going north, turning north, when you're eastbound, is a very challenging thing, because there's the phenomenon. You're sitting here, you're going east toward Prairie Dunes, you're getting ready to go north. It only takes 5 cars to be stacked up between K61 and where you're at that totally blocks your vision from the outside lane. So it's kind of an illusion. One could think, oh, it's going to be all right. And then you start making your turn, and all of a sudden, what the heck? I didn't see that coming. And so I've noticed there's a real quickening at that intersection. People are coming from Prairie Dunes and Prairie Hills and coming off of 61, and they've been used to going faster. And it's still a 40-mile-an-hour speed zone going down 30th Street when you're heading west. And so the idea is to get through it and get on with the day. Well, especially at morning and night, especially during the primetime drive times, when those cars start stacking up, the ones turning north really do face a challenge. I would just invite you to, maybe you commissioners look at it yourself and maybe do some feasibility. Living just 5 blocks north, we've heard a lot of siren activity there in the last 3 years. But my biggest concern is for the northbound traffic coming off of eastbound 30th. Am I making myself? I'm a recovering dyslexic. I got that?
So Chuck, are you talking about just across the street from the school there?
Yeah, the Union Valley, and of course then you also get a little quickening, but at least they're on the south side of the street and nobody's turning north there. But I just would invite you to think about putting some sort of a
Left turn.
of a turn light, if that's possible, at least for the northbound, because everybody's coming like crazy from the east, and everybody, especially, you know, we tend to turn when the light is yellow. You know, that's when you think, oh, it's going to be okay now, and it's sure as heck somebody is wanting to make the light from the other side, and they are busting it, and you start creeping in that intersection you can't see, and all of a sudden it was pretty bad. So I think I made my point, but think about that for the northbound 30th and Halstead. It might save a life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pyle. That will be duly noted, and I'm sure Mr. Deardoff will want to visit with our engineering department and about that situation. Mr. Pyle, I would tell you that you are a man after my heart. You're really a man after my heart, and I think the council members know what's coming next, is that I'm a strong advocate that we need to slow people down, and if we would reduce that speed limit along East 30th to, I'm saying 20, 25 miles an hour.
Very funny, John.
I see a lot of eyebrows on that, but anyway, that's an editorial comment. I have a vote of 1 so far on that proposition.
I don't know. You're working on me, John.
Yeah.
I'm starting
See,
to.
there we
Maybe
go,
I'm,
yeah.
as a cyclist, maybe I'm coming on
My
board.
family has disowned me.
Well, John, have we had any traffic studies conducted for
You know,
that
we
area?
actually had a project, I'm going to say almost 8 or 9 years ago, when working with the school. At that time, there was potential of a commercial development across the street there. Now that's all changed because of the medical Prairie Star,
Prairie
yeah.
Star,
And but it was a part of a bigger picture, kind of long term. Because I'm thinking, right, there's no dedicated turn lane there.
No, there isn't.
And you know, that's just something we really need to probably look at to see how that traffic flows. And typically when we do those, we take a full look at the traffic patterns, traffic counts to determine, you know, what, you know, necessitates dedicated turn lanes or, you know, those kinds of things. Because there, I don't believe there's even a dedicated turn, even though there's not a dedicated turn lane. I know that. So that may be something we can look at. But I know exactly what he's talking about. So we'll look at that and see, you know, how things have changed, and you know, the speeds are obviously an issue there as people are coming through intersections like that. So, and I think that the way that traffic light works, the north-south on Halstead hit and hit the pad. I'm losing the words there, but basically it stays, you know, it doesn't just circulate all the time. It's traffic driven. Is that, yeah, so in other words, there's got to be traffic coming from Halstead, both north and south, to flick that light there. Otherwise, it would stay green the whole way. And, you know, sometimes traffic patterns are where there's not a lot of traffic, so people are used to that, you know, just being green along a lot. So, but we'll look at that and see what's changed there, maybe. So,
is that portion of 30th under consideration for any improvements coming up?
No, not on top of my head.
I couldn't remember if I read anything about anything in the immediate future about
I don't think so.
overlay or anything along
there
that
was
lines.
a little bit of work, of course, when the highway went in to create the turn lanes up at K61 and 30th. But but at some point in time, we're bringing that all back, and of course that's all open ditch, and you know, we're looking at curb and gutter, and you know, we've looked at Halstead, you know, going south, and looking at some trail projects there that would require road work, but nothing that I'm
Nothing
aware
specific.
of.
Okay, I don't know if I read that or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Anyone else in the audience that would have any comments this morning? Seeing none, next item.
Item 7, consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Please call roll.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes. Next item.
Item 8A, consider ordinance amending the comprehensive plan land use map.
Good morning. I'm Casey Jones, Senior Planner with the Planning Department. And I've got a request here from a property owner in town by the name of Michael Smith. And he has come to the Planning Department with a request to build what you would call a barn. I guess it's a large storage building he would like to build on his property. He owns a piece of property on the west side of town, on the map before you, 1328 West 12th. It's about 10 acres of land. It has a small single-family dwelling on it that was built almost 100 years ago. And the way that it's zoned currently, it's in a residential district, an R4 district. In order to build a large storage building on a tract like that, you just have to have a different kind of zoning. It's not permitted in the zoning district it's in. Based on the size of the home being as small as it is, and the fact that there are some existing accessory buildings on that property already. So we tried to work with the applicant and come to a solution that would enable him to be able to build this storage building out there on that big piece of land. And what we proposed to do was to first go back and amend the comprehensive plan land use map. The zoning district that we proposed putting here is TA, a transitional agricultural zone. And the way that our land use map is situated now, this map that you're looking at, it designates that whole area as high density residential. And when you go into our new comprehensive plan and you look at the table of compatible land uses that are compatible with the TA district, high density residential is not compatible with the TA district, but low density residential is. So in order to get the TA zone at this location, you would have to amend the comprehensive land use map. So I can't really talk about the comprehensive plan without talking about the zoning, so kind of intertwining the two there. But essentially, request number one is to change the land use map here to enable the zoning to be changed. So one can't be done without the other. And we did have a public hearing, and I solicited comments from some of the neighboring property owners. I did have a couple of comments come in favor. And in fact, the property owner of the land to the west, which is about a 7 or 8 acre tract of land, was interested in the idea of also being zoned TA, but we didn't receive an application from that owner at this time. There's a possibility in the future that might happen. Staff encouraged the applicant to talk to some of the neighbors and see if they might be interested in also joining in on this action, but weren't able to get all that information, the applications put together in time. So for now, we're just looking at the one tract of land, the 10-acre tract. We did have a public hearing, as I mentioned. The Planning Commission recommended approval of it. And I don't believe we had any members of the public come speak at the meeting, other than the one written comment I got in favor in the mail. So do you have any questions for me or for the applicant who's here today?
Casey, the property labeled Crown Homes, those are duplexes, or those are duplexes, am I right, or are they singles?
They're singles.
I think they're small, single-family.
Small singles,
detached.
okay. And that directly north of there that's marked New Beginnings, is that vacant property right now?
That's a vacant
Or undeveloped,
tract.
I should say, yeah.
The Crown Homes was a project of New Beginnings as well. It's a
Right.
20-year
Several years ago.
I can show you some photographs of the
Private
area
project.
if you're not familiar with it. This is a picture of the property we're talking about. The house there on the right-hand side is the house at 1328 West 12th. And it has a long driveway going back to it. A portion of that driveway is city property. It's a city street. And then a portion just becomes unpaved once it crosses onto private property.
So the driveway is Hayes Street, is that correct? Or
Up to a point.
Yeah.
Well, up
Yeah, I
to,
can go back to the, you can see the some of it's paved
Know where
here.
the utility pole is.
And then there's some unplatted, well, I should say there's some platted area. There's some area that's been subdivided out here many, many years ago. that's just never been developed. The streets, the water and sewer haven't been installed. And so, if I can go back to the map, you can see the area to the west of this property is actually subdivided into residential lots, but it was never ever developed and not likely to be developed in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, 12th Street doesn't really exist, right?
Doesn't really exist,
Okay.
only on paper.
Okay.
So the west neighbor, if they do end up compiling the necessary paperwork, we may have this conversation later about
It's
that
possible.
parcel being rezoned.
It's possible. You know, from staff's perspective, it's much better to look at a larger area, more of a district. I mean, typically you don't see just a single tract be a district,
But this is a large.
but it is a large tract.
Yeah.
And we had the question come up at the Planning Commission meeting where one of the commissioners asked, is this considered a spot zoning? Well, we looked at it from our perspective, what are the detrimental impacts? We really couldn't think of any. And the fact that it's just a 10-acre lot, you know, look at the size of the lots around it. There are a couple of other tracts that are similar sized. But normally a district is more than one tract, but this is a very large tract. So just considering that, I think we wanted to work with the applicant and try to allow him to develop something out there on that lot.
You're comfortable with allowing this and then looking at the next parcel to the west at a later date, or is it better to try to incorporate that into?
Yeah, well,
change of the
for the time
contract?
being, we were just trying to facilitate the
Yeah.
applicant's proposal and kind of work with him to get something approved for the short term, and then later come
Okay.
back and take a look at it. When this map was adopted, this land use map, you know, it's part of our new comprehensive plan. I'm not going to say that we went and looked at every single tract and tied down exactly what we wanted that land use to be, really scrutinizing it closely. The fact is we took a look at our existing zoning map, and all of the areas that were zoned R4, we designated those as high-density residential. So you will see in the future more of these requests coming before you as the city or as citizens come to us with zoning amendment requests. We're always going to take a look at this land use map, and if there's something on the land use map that isn't compatible with the zoning that's proposed, then we'll go through this process to try to change the map, or have you, if you don't think it's agreeable, then have it denied and move on.
Yeah.
So.
Was there a change in zoning or designation between prior to the comprehensive plan and the plan?
No, this area.
This is a continuation
has been,
of what we've been looking at or have had for quite some time.
Yeah, I haven't seen any zoning changes in the area, other than at the bottom left-hand corner of this screen, there's a fire station that where we expanded that and rezoned some land over there for that.
It gets pretty industrial going south, so it high resident or high density doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and transitional I mean, I drove it yesterday, and transitional agriculture makes, in my mind, much more sense than high-density residential. So, I mean, it's a big open field. A couple of them, actually.
All right, any further questions of Casey by council? Any comments from anyone in the audience? I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept and approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission to approve the request for an ordinance providing for adoption of an amendment to the comprehensive plan land use map appearing at section M-1-7-B of the 2017 to 2037 comprehensive plan for Hutchinson, Kansas, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call roll.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes.
Daveline?
Yes, next item.
All right.
I-
Well, Go ahead, Linda.
Item 8B, consider rezoning request for 1328 West 12th.
Didn't mean to get ahead of you. Talking about the same property, 1328 West 12th. Don't have a lot more to say about it.
Right.
The current zoning is R4. The proposed zoning is TA. And staff recommended approval, as did the planning commission, by a unanimous vote. And this isn't something you can place conditions on. You either approve it or you don't. So we did look at the factors, the 9 factors required for approving a zoning amendment, and found all of those to be met. And here is the recommended motion for your consideration.
All right, council, questions?
No, based on previous conversation, I would move to accept and approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission to approve the request to rezone 1328 West 12th Avenue from R4 Residential Neighborhood Conservation District to TA Transitional Agricultural Rural District based on due consideration of the factors shown, adopt an ordinance for publication, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call roll.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes.
Daveling?
Yes. Next item.
Item 9A, consider request for conditional use permit for billboard sign at 1809 East 17th.
Good morning, Janet McCarran, Director
Do you
of
guys do a
Planning
little
and
like
Development.
tag you're in when
Yeah.
you go by each other? Next.
This is actually Casey's case, but I thought I'd take
Give
this
him a break
one
or
for you.
something.
And this is a request for a conditional use permit for a new sign to be located at the Hutchinson Mall. The applicant's Andy Wiener with Rockstep Capital. Agent Jeff Brewer with Luminous Neon is in the audience today. And Laura from the mall, she's the mall manager, is here as well. Just gonna skip past that. So here's the subject property, and I think you're probably all pretty familiar with this sign.
Been there a while.
Yep. Yeah, it's been there a long time, probably since the mall opened. Is this one up here, kind of at the corner of K61 and East 17th Avenue? I don't know if you can really see it very well on that, but what they're proposing to do is take down that existing mall sign, it just says Hutchinson Mall, and replace it with a sign that looks a lot like a center identification sign. But because of the size, it's 300 square feet, we have to consider it a billboard. Also, it's an off-premises sign, it's not really on the mall property. So that's why we classified it as a billboard, and it does require a conditional use permit under our current regulations. You can see that they're hoping to advertise a number of stores that are at the mall. And I have just a few renderings here for you. This is the existing sign. So you can see it'll look a lot different from that existing sign, but it will go in the same location. And the Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 2nd to consider the request, and they recommended approval unanimously. They did have some conditions that they wanted to attach, or that they did attach, and recommend that you all attach to the approval. And those are as follows. This conditional use permit would be used only for a billboard sign at the given location. Shall be used only to advertise businesses, services, products, and events that are on that Hutchinson Mall property. A sign permit will be obtained. Basically, some of these are standard conditions. I'm going to skip down to number 6, that the conditional use permit would expire on May 16th of 2018 if they did not put a sign there. And if they didn't comply with these conditions, we could revoke the conditional use permit. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and the applicant is here as well. They could probably answer them better than me, but.
It looks to be very similar to the ones that are already out there. Is it of similar size?
It's a little larger, about 50 square feet larger. Those were center identification signs. So this one's a little bit larger, and that's why we had to classify it as a billboard sign. But I think the style is very similar.
Okay.
It sure seems to make sense to me. Jade mentioned the 2 other signs, and it'll make for a continuation. I've often wondered, Hutchinson Mall, and then the only thing we mention is 8 theaters or something like that.
Right. Well, Laura, please convey, and appreciate your being here, please convey to Mr. Weiner our continued encouragement by him wanting to continue to improve the mall, improve the signage, and what we're seeing so far is a great start, and I know there'll be more coming. Very good. Council, you have any other questions?
Mm-mm.
Do we have a motion?
Okay, I will move to accept and approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission to approve the conditional use permit for a billboard sign on the property at 1809 East 17th for the Hutchinson Mall pursuant to the factors and conditions presented.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Please call roll.
Iris De Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes.
Stabler?
Yes. Next item.
Item 9B, consider recommendation to the Reno County Commission for approval or denial of a conditional use permit for 2505 East 56th.
Okay, this is our first type of case of this type. So I may not be as polished, not that I ever am, but anyway. This is a request for a conditional use permit in the county. So we're not the granting body for the conditional use permit, but because this property is located within the city's area of influence, the city council, the city and the city council are allowed the option to comment on the case. And so the applicant wishes to build a contractor's equipment and materials storage yard on this property. That's at least how we would classify it based on our ordinance. Here's the property. It's kind of at the intersection of 56th and Halsted, just a little to the east there. And this is actually one large lot. They're hoping to use this part of this property for the proposed development. And here's the Reno County zoning map. It's zoned residential R1. Reno County recently redid their zoning, and so they basically have two types of zoning. They have agricultural and they have residential. They don't have commercial zoning or industrial zoning. So if somebody wants to put in a commercial or an industrial use, they have to get a conditional use permit. So that's why the conditional use permit is appearing before them. This is an excerpt from our comprehensive land use map. And you can see it's in the area of influence, and we have it designated as low-density residential. It's kind of right up on the edge. Down here, this is the current city limits, this green line. And so we're about maybe from 50th to 56th, about 6 blocks north of the current city limits. Here's the K61 intersection, just to orient you. And we have designated that as commercial on our comprehensive plan land use map. Just a few photos of the property, facing west, facing south. It does have quite a few woods on it. It's 56 area. There's the home. And you can see there's some power lines that cross the road there and onto this property. And you can see the power lines then on the site plan right here. So I'm going to zoom in on this site plan for you. They would access the property from here. This would create a new driveway basically. And then they're proposing to put in a storage building, some storage space, and then potentially in the future another building, an additional space. And then they have concrete parking on here, but at the Planning Commission public hearing, the applicant, Kyle Altvader, who's in the audience today, mentioned that the county has an option where they can ask for that requirement to be waived, and they're going to ask for the requirement for the concrete parking to be waived. So city staff reviewed the proposal. I think I have a diagram of the whole process in your staff report. And city staff recommended denial because the use would be classified as an industrial in our zoning regulations. And industrial uses are not really compatible with the surrounding character out there in that neighborhood. They also have potential impacts for adverse environmental impacts, conflicts with our comprehensive land use plan map, could conflict with future annexation of the property depending upon how the nature of this development and could have some drainage impacts. The Planning Commission considered this proposal on the 2nd of May, and they had a split vote. So 3 of them were in favor of the conditional use permit and 3 were opposed, which kind of means that it's up to you all. Of course, it means it's up to you all, but they, in looking at it, they felt like there are some industrial properties already out there, or at least, I don't know if they're actually permitted, but there are some that are quasi-industrial. And the ones that voted, so those are the ones that voted in favor, that was their basis. The ones that voted against felt like, well, this is exactly why we have this area of influence, and some of the comments made where we don't want this to look like East 4th Avenue. So it's kind of a tough one. I'm happy to answer any questions, like I said, and the applicant is in the audience. If you guys vote to approve it, then I'll just communicate that to the county. If you decide that you want to request denial, then what would happen is I would have the mayor sign the letter that was in your packet. We would formally send that letter to the county. And then when it gets to the Board of Commissioners, they would have to have a unanimous vote to approve the project. So.
All right.
Okay. So ultimately, the authority rests with them. It's just our opinion.
Right,
is considered.
exactly. We don't really have
It's
authority
not
over
ours.
the project. We just have the ability to say, well.
To comment and recommend.
And the unanimous vote, does that only come into play if the denial? Will a simple majority do it if we
Right.
approve?
I mean,
or-
we don't, I guess my take on that would be, well, why would they want to override our approval? But I think the county is supportive of the request. The county planner is, at least, when I talk to him.
All right, council, do you have any questions?
Jana,
Of Jana?
if this property was on the north side of 56th, we wouldn't have any opportunity to comment.
Right, we wouldn't comment at all. That's outside of our area of influence.
Okay, here again, I went on a little road trip yesterday. I don't think you would ever see anything unless he completely strips that whole lot of the existing trees. I think everything's far enough back that if you're going down the road, you are not going to be cognizant of the fact that you have a storage building out there. So to me, this is kind of a tough one. It's not like the body shop on further down on 56th on the other side of 61. So it's not going to be an eyesore, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Today.
Today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you would have to take out all the trees there.
Right.
And it's kind of uphill somehow. It's interesting.
Other questions, comments from council?
A comment. For myself, what I struggle with is that, and David's comment today
Sure.
reminds me that what actions we take today or this year, we may not. Others will deal with it down the road, 10 or 20 years. And so I struggle with how far-sighted should we be, or how nearsighted should we be. I think that in the immediacy of, and immediacy probably means at least 5 or 10 years, maybe longer. Why not pursue this, and why not agree with it occurring? On the other hand, further down the road, assuming Hutchinson does continue to expand to the north, which is where we've been expanding over the last many years, it will be dealt with then as an industrial use, most likely. That will be problematic at that time. I'm not indicating where I'm at this point. I'm just,
Yeah. I think we're all having the same struggle, yeah.
It does. I think, I assume most of us, but certainly for me, it does create the quandary.
Can we hear from the applicant?
Yeah, can we hear from the applicant? One question I have, followed on with Nancy Solder is how far back will the storage buildings be in? Please come to the podium here, sir. Sir, why don't you come, if you would come up here,
Yeah.
introduce yourself
Thank you.
and kind of explain your thinking and your project, if you would.
I'm Kim Altvader.
Kim Altvader, all right?
Yes, and we live on 2505 East 56th. I actually own that 14 acres in there. We don't, I mean, I can't see where that property would ever be anything that you could develop, especially family dwellings, because, you know, the power lines run across there, and to the south of us, there's about a 20-foot deep swamp area that they dug out for the overpass on 61.
Oh.
And the other thing I'd kind of like to clarify is it's really not classified industrial. We're not going to manufacture anything out of that building. In fact, there will be nobody at that building during the day. It's not going to be open to public service. There'll probably be some employees come in the morning and load some supplies and stuff up that they need for the day, and maybe in the evening come back and unload some things, and possibly that won't even happen every day.
Can we go back to the site plan?
Yes, sir.
Jana, if you would. Talk about the setbacks and your intended purpose in terms of that storage building. My question is that will you have any outside storage?
Actually, right now, too, I'm glad you brought that up. We have actually taken off that outside storage deal and the future plans. We have no intention of ever adding anything to it. We had just originally put that on there because we'd visited the county and they said that you might add this to the site plan, because if you did ever want to in the future, that it would save a lot of hassle. It would, you know, all we'd have to do is get another permit and go ahead and add on.
So you're
But
talking one structure now?
we're talking one structure.
Is that the 5,760 square feet?
Yes,
All
that's
right.
correct.
And then the 3,200 square feet, is that another phase of your project for
Well,
storage or a structure?
It was, and we just added that because they said if you ever do think you would want to add to this in the future, that it would be more simple to just come back in. We just have to, if we get this conditional use permit through, to just go ahead and do it. But we have actually taken that off. We don't plan on any future buildings there.
Will this be a metal building or a
It's going to
concrete
be
or?
a stick-built building.
Be a stick-built?
It's going to be a stick.
And how about the siding and the roof
It will
line?
probably be metal. The
Be a
siding.
metal
Right.
roof or metal siding?
Metal roof and probably the sides too. Maybe it's going to be a nice looking building.
What's the height of your building?
16 foot.
16 foot?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not a Butler building. It's just a...
No, it's
Okay.
not
All right, yeah.
What is the setback from the
Yeah, and then the
road to
setback,
the
right.
front of the building?
Well, we don't. It's what would it be? 160 and 30 and another 60 is what? That'd
It's
be
quite a ways
320.
back.
Yeah.
And I assume that's dictated by the power line and the easement?
Yes, we have an
running,
easement there.
running in front of the building.
For the power lines, that's correct.
You've got to stay back from that, or off that easement
That's
area.
correct. Yes, it is.
Now, where's the swamp area that was dug out? Can you sort of identify it?
Maybe you can show them. I don't know.
This is the best. They indicated it's down in here.
Okay, and does the county require a drainage study of any sort? So it would just be...
I didn't hear what you...
I don't know if the county requires a drainage study.
Oh, no.
No,
they do
okay.
not.
So it would just be wherever it goes.
Right.
And your feelings are that that swamp area want to adequately address drainage issues, Jana, for the future, or?
Actually, I think maybe it's right here.
Could you go back to the overhead aerial shot or satellite shot or whatever that was? Yeah.
That one?
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't go as far south, or is that it to the immediate right-hand corner, bottom of the screen, that
Yes.
drainage space?
Yeah.
Okay.
Down there where they.
Down there? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Southeast corner.
They did that, well, they dug a bunch of that out, you know, for that overpass they put in there. There's never gonna be any development in that area. I mean, I don't know how anybody would build anything in there. It's really just wasted property is what it is. And in our building too, as far as that goes, I heard your comment on that. It will be setting back far enough that I doubt if anybody even sees it from the road. And we have consulted with our neighbors too, and they have no problem with us doing this.
Tell me again, Jana reviewed that. What exactly will you be doing in that business operation?
Actually, it's just a storage building.
Storage building.
Yes, we will be. We're going to store a lot of our personal items in there. To be honest with you, probably 70% of it's going to be. We've got a lot of play toys. You know?
Okay.
So I've got old cars. We got 2 fifth-wheel campers, motorhome, and all we're basically using for is storage. And there may be a rainy day or so where they may change oil in a company vehicle, grease equipment, but it's basically just to shelter the equipment and stuff and park it there in a place for a couple employees to come and leave from. And
No abandoned vehicles?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we're not, yeah.
So
we're
what
not
is the
doing-
business, sir?
It's Altbader Concrete Construction.
Yeah.
Concrete
That's
construction.
We've lived out there for a year. I mean, going on 40 years now. And
Where are you
and my
operating?
dad was a contractor in this area for 40-some years and built, you know, homes and light commercial. And I mean, he's got his construction shop out there now, you know, on our original 10 acres.
Oh.
Yeah.
So and that's what you're operating the business out of now?
Well, actually, we're operating. We've got a son that lives in McPherson County, and actually, the office for the business is on what's the street? Stroud Road. Stroud Road. So this isn't where somebody's going to be working out of an office. There's not going to be somebody there all day long. It's not open for public access. There will be a lock gate on it, and there will be 3 of us that has a key to it. So there's not going to be a lot of traffic in and out of there. We're not going to manufacture anything. That's why I say I don't really consider it an industrial building, because there's not going to be any manufacturing or building of anything out there. It's basically just for storage, actually.
Thanks, sir.
Jana?
Okay, thank you.
Another question of you.
Sure.
If this were not being used for a business, if this were being built in its current size, configuration, for the purpose of housing RVs and whatever else, would we be even looking at this?
I don't think so. I don't think that would
I
require
had
a
the same
conditional
question,
use
Steve. Thanks.
permit. So when the county planner met with the applicant, they ask a lot of questions just like we do, and based upon his conversation with the applicant, determined that this was a contractor's equipment and storage yard. And based upon that use, it requires a conditional use permit. In the city, that is considered industrial. I'm not clear. I think he still intends to have some outdoor storage. I wasn't clear. I know you asked him a couple times, but I believe that there still will be some outdoor storage, and that's what kicks it into industrial for the city. Because I think you can have contractors' offices, and that's not an industrial use, but once you start doing outdoor storage, it is. So here's that space you were talking about. I think he
Do
probably...
that again, please. I'm sorry. I'd looked down.
The 320.
I'm sorry, the
3,200 square feet.
Right.
Yeah,
It
okay,
still would have
gotcha.
some, but, you know, you guys have made a lot of good points, too, that you won't be able to see it from the road, and, you know, what are the impacts?
Jana, is there any provision within the city's authority to basically prohibit, in any recommendation we make, any outside storage at any point? Do we have any authority to state that? And
You know, I think one thing that you could consider is recommending approval with the following conditions.
Conditions.
and if the following conditions,
And
all
then they
right?
can decide to add the conditions or not add them.
It's still up to the county
It's
commission.
Still up to the
Yeah.
county commissioner, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think his point about the fact with the power line running through there, the chances of that being residential development are slim to none. I don't see that happening. If I would not want to build a house, I don't think, underneath a power line or in real close proximity. I like the idea of putting the condition that outside storage is not permissible given the location. Otherwise, I don't have any problem with it, doing it.
I too would be an advocate of placing that condition on any recommendation we may make in terms of not allowing any outside storage on the premises. That's kind of vague, but you get the intent.
What's the,
Yes, sir.
Please do.
Yes, please introduce yourself if you would.
I'm Gary Graber. I live at 3403 Arrowhead in Kissawah. I get a family member or concerned citizen and not concerned about, I think that, Kim made a point that the fact that they are willing to withdraw the outside storage. And I think, that outside storage opens itself up to all kinds of issues that you might have. But I think in special consideration for this piece of property, looking at the fact that the high-lined easement goes across one side of it, Kim owns the property all the way, almost a half a mile to the west, and to the back of it is that ditch that was reclaimed or so forth, and is basically now a swampland. That this particular piece of property, I think, probably should have special consideration, because there's very, very limited, if no, use outside of storage.
I would agree with that. I would think that it's unique enough that we wouldn't be setting some sort of precedent for approval of projects like this in the future.
That's my very point, because there's 3 or 4 issues here that make the property literally unusable for anything but storage, and it lets the family use it for something. So thank you for your consideration.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
I had another question. Looking at the display to the furthest right, the lower right-hand corner, I know that's a in the future kind of thing, but is that a building, or is that again another outside storage space?
Well, and he said he's probably not going to do this, but this was a building that crosshatched one here, and then there was more storage space behind it.
So it was a potential future building plus more outside storage. Okay.
And so when we received the application, when staff did, we did not have the benefit of talking to the applicant. So if you got this, you saw concrete parking, you saw all these buildings, you would assume that this is an industrial use. At the public hearing then, the applicant well, it wasn't really a public hearing, but at the meeting with the Planning Commission, the applicant was able to explain, well, here's what I really want to do. So you can see why the Planning Commission was kind of split on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Jen, you don't need to backpedal. I appreciate the staff work, and appreciate seeking to. You don't need to backpedal as far as I'm concerned. I did have another question. I think I read somewhere there's a bathroom intended for the interior of the building. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Are there other? You might come forward, sir. Thank you.
You don't get to sit down.
So there's a bath. Are there other pits of any sort? Oil changing pits? What else is intended for the finishing of the inside besides the bathroom?
No, there's nothing else for the inside other than the toilet and maybe a lavatory sink. And then we do have a little corner that we want to frame off to, well, it's a climate control room, I should call it, because we do have some sealers and, you know, caulking supplies and stains, it's water-based stains and stuff that needs to be in a climate control room. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe an office at some point or a workspace?
Oh, no, we're not
No?
gonna have an office in there. They already have their office at our other locations, so,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, there won't be anybody out there all day long, you know, it'll just be mornings and maybe evenings to come back and unload and load, so.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay. Council, do you have any other questions of the applicant or of Jana?
Just for my own clarification one more time, Janet, to make sure. Again, the conditional use permit is because it was viewed as an industrial use, but it only got kicked to the industrial use because of the outdoor storage space? Or is that only one of the?
The conditional use permit is a requirement of the county if you're not building something accessory to a house.
Excuse me, okay.
So I don't know exactly how the county classified this use, but under the city's ordinance, this is an industrial use because of the outdoor storage.
Okay, so we, for our standpoint, our view, if we remove the outdoor storage spot, we no longer view it, city no longer views it as an industrial
I'm pretty
use.
sure that if we allow contractors' offices
Right.
and indoor storage in commercial zones, but let me double check on that, Casey, is that your understanding as well? I have the ordinance in front of me. I believe it's the outdoor storage.
It's the outdoor storage. Okay, I thought I picked up on that.
So it's the outdoor storage solely that kicks it from the commercial to the industrial?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure of that. I don't have my ordinance in
Yeah.
front of me.
And prior to the conversation, that was what was sticking in my particular craw was the industrial, and I was almost reading it as if we were rezoning to industrial, which is not the case, but the industrial use.
Right.
And if that's removed, then it's no longer an industrial use, in my opinion. I think that's kind of what everybody else was saying as well.
Yeah, and seriously, you have a body shop just the other side of K61 on 56th. I mean, and he's got multiple vehicles and a huge shop, and so, you know,
That's east of K61?
yeah, it's east of K61.
I will
Yeah.
say for me, that's plenty far away that if I
Yeah,
were
but if
leaning
it-
towards not agreeing with supporting this conditional, that's far enough away that it's
It
another
is,
world.
it is and it isn't, especially if we're saying that it's going to be
If that
commercial.
was the only thing, we'd be on
Yeah.
different sides of this matter.
That's true.
If that were the
That's
only
true.
element that was there.
But-
I would move that we recommend approval to the Reno County Commission for a conditional use permit and include in that recommendation that outside storage, that there be a further condition that outside storage not be allowed, or that this be a conditional use without outside storage. Excuse me. And this is relative to the property located at 2505 East 56th Avenue within the city of Hutchinson's area of influence, and that we authorize the mayor to sign that letter.
I'll second.
All right, is that motion clear to everyone?
Yeah.
Second by Nancy. All
Yeah.
right, is that motion clear?
I understand.
Yeah, I think,
Any further discussion? All right, let's call roll, please.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes. I would note that I know the Altvaters and their track record in Reno County, and I believe that you will build a quality storage facility and take care of it in the way that it's intended. So thank you very much. Yes, sir. All right, next item.
Item 9C, consider approval of change order number 1 to contract with APAC Kansas for 2017 Arterial Street Maintenance Program.
Morning, Bruce.
Good morning.
Trying to get,
Morning, Mayor and Council. Bruce Colley, Director of Engineering for the City of Hutchinson. Trying to get the pictures up. There we go. This is a change order related to our arterial surface streets. that is not under construction yet. It is to commence construction on May the 22nd next week.
We already have a change order.
We already have a change order. What we had done, and I know that it's a bit difficult to see, but I'll direct your eyes to the top of that picture, and you're going to see a green line. All the red lines are areas that we are going to mill and resurface. The green lines were areas, or are areas, that were omitted. The top green line that was omitted was from Sequoia, which is on the left-hand side of the picture, east of Plum Creek School. And the reason that was omitted was, if you drive down 43rd, you'll see that the pavement condition in Plum Creek School is in very, very good shape. And I saw that as a need not to expend funds to mill and resurface that area. And so we eliminated that portion after the contract was let. Coming back down Plum Street. Plum Street is the street just to the left there from Sequoia, headed to the west. You'll come down there, and there was a section between Cherokee and Roberts. Kissawah Village is there on your left. That's the other green line area. That in driving that section, the rideability's good. The pavement section itself appears to be in pretty decent shape, and it was my decision to go ahead and eliminate that from the overall project. The remainder of Plum Street from 30th all the way up to 43rd certainly did warrant the mill and resurface from the rideability standpoint, as well as the structural characteristics exhibited in the pavement. With that removal, I suggested that we need to go back to APAC to go ahead and include some areas that I felt were in need of improvements in the mill and resurface. The first area that I suggested was from Severance of 23rd down to 17th, which was recently completed. And of course, that is in the center of the photograph there, picture, and that is located in blue. So that was one addition. The next addition, if you move down to the lower left-hand portion of that screen, you'll see that we had in our program included a section there from Adams on down, and in driving that area for a third time, hindsight's always 20/20, but wanted to be sure of what we had. It became extremely evident to me that the next section, which is 5th Avenue from Adams to Brookside, which is the east-west blue line. Brookside would be all the way to your left, tying into Adams. That area was in sad condition, and I'm not worried that it won't make it another year without a reconstruction, which would be completely redoing the roadway itself and things of that nature. As Jeff Schenk and I continued to go ahead and do our little motorcade, when we got to Monroe, and I said, go ahead and turn south on Monroe. And we went from Monroe, from 2nd, which would be on the lower end of that blue line, up to 5th. Again, noticed some extremely distressed pavement, and the structural condition really frightened me, and felt like that we needed to get that on this year's program. As a result, we submitted our changes to APAC of Kansas, which is the selected contractor for this project, and came back with an overall increase of $148,680.61. And funding is available through the CIP reserve budget. And I think it's a very prudent move and prudent action. And so it is our recommendation to council for you to consider approval of change order number 1 and have the mayor sign the contract change order with APAC of Kansas Shears Division in the amount of $148,000. $148,680.61, compliable, of course, to all legal requirements. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may
Bruce,
have.
I find no disagreement with your analysis here at all. My question is, the $148,000 from the CIP reserve budget, are we all comfortable with drawing down off of that CIP reserve budget this additional amount of funds?
Yes, we've looked, and that's a very, very good question, because the CIP reserve budget is an extremely critical budget.
Yes.
And we've been trying to build that reserve even prior to my arrival at the city of Hutchinson. And to be able to continue on, and of course, the infamous quarter-cent sales tax that's talked about, and to be able to maintain the streets within the city. As you continue to drive through the streets within the city, the degradation of those streets is very, very frightening to me from a civil engineering standpoint. However, we felt and met with Mr. Edwards, met with Mr. Deerdoff on this item, and we feel comfortable that we'll be fine with the reduction of that budget.
Is that trend balance reserve, is that basically flat, or is it, does it appreciate, or is it declining substantially?
It's not declining substantially. We do everything that we can to go ahead and increase that on an annual basis. And I've got another item coming up that after this one, but I do not like to be the low bidder. I like to be in the middle of the road, if not high. And when we get, there's a lot of great things that come around. I mean, based on oil prices here in the past few years, we've had very good low bids. And what we'll do is we'll take that budgeted amount and then slide that over into that reserve, so we can do everything that we increase those reserves to continue our quest to provide good roads for the residents of the city. But it does every year go down a little bit. There's no doubt about that.
Is that right?
Yeah, you recall when we did the state of the streets about, I think, back in 14.
Yeah.
Mr. Clinton showed that, I mean, there's a steady decline of our reserves, that at some point in time we're not going to have as much money each year to do our street program as we have now. So there is a trend to that. So how we address that, that'll be future budget discussions. So
But for now, you're comfortable with the drawing down off of this reserve?
Yes,
Okay.
sir, I am.
now, correct me if I'm wrong, on the next thing you're going to talk about, we're going to get some money back from the county, right?
Yes, that's one thing that I.
But that's not to confuse this item.
All right.
But it has to do with our multi-jurisdictional road discussion we had.
Meetings we had, yes, sir.
Yeah, and if it's fine, I guess I'll go ahead and
Well,
indulge into
You want to
that.
deal with this first?
I think so. If
Council, you have any other questions?
Yes.
Of Bruce? Yes, go ahead.
Bruce, briefly talk about that stretch of Severance. I drive that pretty frequently, and I guess I don't consider that a problematic stretch, but talk about it just a little more, please.
Looking when next time you drive, take a look at the both northbound and southbound lanes, and when you approach the roundabout there at the RO plant at 23rd, you're going to see a lot of alligator cracking, and The alligator cracks, what I try to do, and nothing scientific about it, I think it's more common sense, but the alligator cracks in the wintertime are wide, which is not good. And because that pavement in the summertime will swell and those cracks will continually come together. There's also some rutting that follows through there. Severance is a highly traveled arterial within the city. Coupled with that, there's another thing that you'll notice, and I've noticed this, and I've just kind of questioned other folks as well. If you drive down Severance, and I don't care if you're going northbound or southbound, and I know it kind of weaves a little bit, you're going to find that your car is going to pull to the right. And
My car always pulls to the right, so
yeah,
I didn't know the difference.
I could recommend a good alignment guy for you. My
No, go
wife
ahead.
does the same thing. The grade, the cross slope on that road, it's been overlaid, and the cross slope on that road exceeds 5%.
Okay.
I've sent survey crews out there to go ahead and give me the cross slope, trying to figure out why in the heck is it my car? Do I need an alignment? What's going on? The typical cross slope that you're going to see on Main Street and other streets, which is just standard design practices, is 2%. And that's another reason that I selected Severance.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
With regards to some of the increase in cost, is that some of that due to additional miles? Or we're taking off the 2 green lines, we're adding the 3 blue. I'm assuming that's some additional road miles versus what the green was?
Yes, sir. That was the
Do you know
intent.
the difference? Is it close? It looks like
It actually is a little bit more.
it is. Okay.
It is more, yes. Yeah, Mr. Inskeep, and what happened to me is when Jeff and I were out there, and I'll use Fifth Avenue, for example, down there on the lower end. The longer that we continued to drive, then the more I could see issues. When I got up to Brookside on the west edge, then all of a sudden the pavement itself, smooths out and you get a nice even ride. And then the same thing occurred south of Fifth Avenue there on Monroe from 2nd to 5th, and but you have to stop somewhere.
Right.
And but yeah, it does exceed a little bit.
Okay.
Actually, I was incorrect. The next item we're going to talk about is not related to what I just said. So the multi-jurisdictional road issue really is related to a little bit of this. And of course, the mayor and I met with the county some time back, and basically have come to some consensus that that the city would, and there'll be a formal agreement coming to the council to approve, but essentially that we would annex all those roads totally into the city that we've talked about. And as we do that, the county then in 2018 would do an overlay of all those roads at one time, with the exception of the 2 roads that are in the project that Bruce has talked about, up north on Plum from city limits to 43rd. It's the red line up there, part of that. And then the red line going back to the east on 43rd. The county will pay their proportionate share of that. So we've already got that contracted out, and we'll work on the quantity numbers and get the cost of them. And so we'll be getting some money back from the county for those 2 sections of road. So it doesn't really have anything to do with this change order, other than there is going to be a little bit of money coming back. And we had to deal with those 2 roads rather swiftly because they're under contract, because the contracts are actually going to start, I think, next week maybe.
Next week, yes, sir.
And so the county agreed, haven't received it yet, that we would have just a memo of understanding that I would sign between the city and county on the 2 streets I just mentioned, Plum and 43rd. The rest of those 7 or 8 roads on the surrounding the city, that will come back to us in a formal agreement. And again, the agreement now has changed a little bit, but that the county would then, in 2018, do their overlay of all those roads one time.
At their total cost,
Their
and no
total
cost
cost.
sharing from the city.
Yeah. And I know that's a decision the counties, or the city's got to make, and we think that, based on the statute, that there's not a whole lot of wiggle room for us. And, for the most part, I think it turned out pretty good for the city, and the city and the county worked together on that. So, their concern is that, we're going to string this thing out into 2022 or 3, and parties change and people don't understand what the original deal was. And as we looked at it, talking with Brian, we felt like it was best for the city just to get them all overlaid at one time, and then we're done. And then that's a 8, 9, 10-year fix. So that'll take care of those in the distant future anyway. So.
And that's going to be there was discussion at one point about a different standard of overlay. That's to the city standard, if I'm using the correct verbiage.
The only difference, and we asked that question, is it's an overlay. It's not a mill and overlay.
Inch and a half.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's an overlay. They will do some subgrade repairs in areas that are bad, so they're pre-treat some of those, but usually, I think typically there's not a lot to mill down, and so they'll do a mill and overlay and then take care of the shoulder work as well. So, and this is done with county crews, and they've got a crew that does that now and do pretty good work. And they gave us some places that we could look at where we've seen that happen. So, but doesn't really relate to this issue, but in a way it does, because we are getting some funding back from them for those two pieces. Yeah.
Future.
Yes, sir.
Mill and overlays.
Sorry, I was confusing. The next item is the K61 turn lane.
That's all right. But dovetail into what Mr. Deerdoff said, Mayor, that reimbursement will go back into our reserve funds.
Yep.
So it'll
even if it's not a
try
wash,
to recover some of the costs that we're outlaying here.
So it's really a good city-county cooperative effort that the city proposed this to us, and so the city ultimately, I think, will gain from what the county has agreed to do.
Yes, sir. I agree.
All right, Council, do you have any other questions of Bruce on this item?
No, I would be willing to move that we approve the change order number 1 to contract number 2017C22 with APAC Kansas Inc. Shears Division for the 2017 Arterial Street Maintenance Program in the amount of $148,680.61, subject to compliance with all legal requirements, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call roll.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes. Now, next item.
Item 10, report of city officials.
Okay, Nancy, do you have anything this morning?
Mr. Mayor, we had
Oh,
one
I'm
other item that's not on the
Okay. Oh,
agenda
okay.
that I wanted Bruce to talk,
Okay.
and we can do it under my report if you'd like, or we
Go
can
right ahead.
do it now.
Or
And
just
it has
do
to
it
do
right
with
now,
K61. It's kind of a last minute deal, but it has to do with a grant, and we've got some bid lettings due for KDOT, and I'll let Bruce explain it. We need to make a decision on whether we want to continue or not with this project.
This is looking at K61. You're looking northbound. The top cross street at the top of the photograph is 4th Avenue. To provide some genesis on this project, it was originally conceived back in 2013. In 2014, a budget was submitted to KDOT for CLINK funding. KDOT did approve that CLINK funding, and the funding amount that KDOT did approve and that we signed the agreement with them on was $76,470. Before I go on a little bit further, let me explain to you the reason that this project was originally conceived and applied for. if you're headed northbound, so you're in your car and you're actually on the lower end of the television set, and you're coming up over the bridge over the railroad tracks, and you're coming down and you're coming up to Lorraine Street stoplight. Okay, you're headed northbound. You're going to go up to the pizza joint there and get some pizza. The light's green at Lorraine, and you're traveling pretty darn good, and you say, hey, I got a green light here, I wonder if I can hit fourth green. So the natural propensity for people is to go ahead and give the accelerator a little bit more gas, and then you come around that curve up here at the intersection of 4th. And in the left-hand lane of 4th, the present left-hand lane, there's somebody wanting to make a left turn to go west on 4th Avenue. So what you have to do is you have to make an immediate right to get over in the right lane, because this person wants to go to somewhere down 4th Avenue, and hopefully you're making that maneuver and you're coming around a curve, etc. The person that's making that left-hand turn lane sees you in their rear view mirror, and they want to get out of your way because they can see you rapidly approaching their rear end. Directly across on the north side of 4th Avenue, if people are headed southbound, there's a dedicated left-hand turn lane at that stoplight. And that left-hand turn lane, as I understand the history, was actually put in back in the days when Cessna was hot and heavy here, and it required the backup, just the traffic amount, etc., for people heading east out on 4th to go out to Cessna. So you've got a dedicated left-hand turn lane there with a light that tells you that you can turn left. But if I'm sitting in that left-hand turn lane and I want to make that left-hand turn to go west on 4th Avenue, and I see Jana coming behind me, and she's got the baby and this and that and the other, and everything's going, Jade, I'm sorry, everything's going on, I cannot see, because of a side obstruction, because of that vehicle setting in that dedicated left-hand turn lane where Mr. Inskeep is coming down beside him. Thank goodness there's never been any accidents, but the purpose of installing that left-hand turn lane was to go ahead and get a clear vision for somebody wanting to make a left-hand turn. It'll be the green light, which says, turn at your own risk, but observe and yield traffic. But what it does is it provides that line of sight distance to be able to make that move. It lets Jade go ahead and move on past, and I don't have a head-on collision with Mr. Inskeep. So that was the whole intent of the, as I've done the research of this intersection improvement. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
You're talking about installing a left-hand turn lane
Right.
northbound.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Right.
Go ahead.
Like left turn.
Is that the only directional that doesn't have a protected or a dedicated left-hand turn lane in that intersection?
Yes.
To my
Yes.
recollection, it is.
Yeah.
South, east, and west all have a left turn lane.
Yeah.
At that intersection,
At that
absolutely.
intersection,
Yeah,
Yes,
they
sir.
just not the
do.
northbound.
They do.
Yeah.
And so when we looked at this project, we got KDOT funding. And that's where we're kind of at today, based on the grant. KDOT's getting ready to let this project in mid-June, I believe, but the costs are more than what was estimated back in 14 or 15, or whenever we did this grant.
Yep,
And so
absolutely.
Today, we're going to talk to you about whether we pull the plug on this project and not make KDOT go through a bid letting and do all this stuff, and then we decide, well, it's more money. We don't want to do it now. There was a reason why it was on the burner, as Bruce explained at one point in time. But now we didn't think we ought to make them go through the bidding process and then decide then. But I guess that's still an option. But
How much are we talking about?
Bruce?
Okay. Now I'll get into the funding mechanism. I'll back up a little bit. Again, KDOT has agreed to contribute to the funding of $76,470. Just so you know, I've already approached KDOT, letting them know that the The project is going to cost above the $67,000 that we had originally anticipated. They replied to me via email that no, all you get is $76,470. The cost estimate that was completed by BG Consultants, which I subcontracted to BG Consultants for this design on this project, and myself, was $120,392, which leaves a deficit of $57,345.50. As Mr. Deerdoff had indicated, KDOT plans to let this project on June 21st, 2017. So that's next month. I've met with Mr. Edwards, met with Mr. Deerdoff. There's funding that shows available in the CLINC reserves, which is money left over, that we could cover that. Also looked at some ADA funding that was in excess that we could take out of there to try to cover those costs. And we've yet to really solidify where that money would come from, but we have identified some sources to go ahead and cover that amount. The thought there's two options really. Option number one is that we don't encumber the $57,345. Pull the plug. BG Consultants will owe them about $6,000. We can shelve the project, go back for some KDOT TA funding or CLINC funding, or it's now called CLIP funding, for 2019, possibly. I guess that'd be 2020. Is that right? Yeah, 2020. And shelve the plans, or go ahead and come up with the budget dollars. I've got a bad feeling that KDOT has gone all the steps of the way so far on this project. They're scheduled to let. They've got a lot of time in it. I really don't like the thought of telling KDOT, we changed our mind. But again, those are the two options. So one option is that we spend about $6,000 out of the budget to shelve the plans, or we come up with the 57.
How much is left in the CLINC other projects? I mean, what's your remainder there?
It was like
153.
Yeah, 153. I
Okay,
think.
so more than enough to cover this. Personally, I like left turn lanes. Going back to Mr. Pyle's comments earlier, I think sometimes we need them at intersections that are heavily traveled. Do we have an accident history here, or is it just kind of everybody watches out for it because they know it's problematic?
Thank goodness everybody is watched out because they know it's problematic. There are no accidents related to the left turning movement.
Well, I don't know how this fits in with our other priorities, but I'm not convinced that funding will be available from KDOT in future years, especially for a project that we said, thanks on.
I'm with you, Jade.
I thought we had, I'm a bit confused. I thought we had planned on a left turn lane there. Am I mistaken? What's the work that's in the project as it stands right now?
The work that's in the project as it stands right now is essentially that picture. It was conceived in 2013, 2014. The budget amount
and it's to resurface that area of the highway, correct?
Yeah, the budget, the budget that as I recall, I'm going from memory, so excuse me, but there was $11,000 in the streets program that was from us, and then the 6,000 from KDOT. The original estimate was $67,000. But yeah, it's been in the works since 2014.
It did not include adding a left turn lane to it.
It did include, yes.
It did.
Yeah,
I think
in the
the
2000
and that's what I thought. Okay.
17, we've got a project, the CLINC project there, fourth to K61 geometric improvement. It is the left. It is this project.
So
It's because
Costs
it's come
have
in increased.
Costs have increased
Yeah.
since, okay, so
Yes.
it's a cost increase over the 3-4
When we-
years.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
when we originally.
Or the estimate may not, I don't
Okay.
know, it's, yeah, it's,
Bruce, does the scope of this project include the upgrading, if necessary, of the traffic signals at the
Yes.
intersection?
It does include the upgrading of the traffic signals. Our traffic department will do that. It also includes the upgrade of ADA ramps to go ahead and provide access across K61 as well as 4th, and which has been a critical problem. I've received, I guess, 3 phone calls since I've been here regarding that access.
Oh, really?
Yes.
No additional expense to allow it to go to the bid letting, correct? And then there's always the possibility that the
It'll come in lower than
lower than the
Right,
engineer's
and-
estimate.
and
So
it-
that
Yes.
deficit could shrink. It could actually go the other direction as well, but
Absolutely.
but it
Yeah.
could shrink as well. I don't see any reason not to let it go to the bid process then. So then you have a better understanding, because we can still choose to scrap the project at that
I
next
think
step.
that was the third option, not ideal, is that
Yeah.
we open
Nobody wants
bids and
to,
say,
yeah.
yeah, we're not gonna do it, and then, maybe have a slight black eye with KDOT
Yeah.
going through that process.
They're not
but-
going to feel sorry about us not having money.
Exactly, yeah.
They can
But-
put it back in there.
So
But-
really,
So to speak, yeah.
today was just to, we plan to move forward, just kind of wanted to make sure that if we wanted to put a stop on this now, that we would, really just in, some courtesy to KDOT and not spend any more time than they already have on this, so.
So essentially, we'd be saying we're willing to spend the additional 57,000
Yes.
if the engineer's estimate is correct.
Correct.
Yes.
But it would seem to me that clink, the leftover clink money from previous projects, I would assume it has to be applied to a clink project. Am I correct, or
I would-
just?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it would seem logical, since that's what this is, that we go ahead and use part of that reserve to make up whatever the deficit is
That was originally earmarked for
for a
clink.
clink project.
Projects,
So, I mean, you
yes.
can't transfer it to another budget line
Right.
item, so you might as well use it.
Yes, ma'am, I agree.
We typically have assembled 2 or 3 years of clink to do a project, which we've
Yeah.
had to just based on cost. So,
Yeah.
What's the trend in terms of engineering consultants to bid letting, in terms of pricing?
I'm not,
BG Consultants estimated $120,000
Yes.
project cost.
yes.
What's the trend been in terms of, have they been over or under engineer estimates?
They have been, they've been high in their estimate.
They've been high in their estimate,
Yes.
right?
And I also checked their estimate myself. Again, I don't like to be a low bidder. I've been there before, and it's very uncomfortable.
And the oil prices are still such that they should be favorable for us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was thinking the last several road projects, again,
Yep.
this doesn't mean the trend can't change, but have been under the engineer's estimate.
Have been
Yes.
under the engineer.
Correct.
The last
Yes, sir.
several anyways.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Are we needing a motion on this?
No,
No.
just really, I think we're
Update
going to
and
proceed.
Proceed with caution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no, go ahead.
I have one more item that's not on the agenda, and I truly apologize. I attended a meeting yesterday morning in Topeka for the transportation alternative funding, and they've revised their format a little bit, but this was an informative seminar for consultants, municipal representatives, et cetera. I'd like to highlight a little bit of those with you, and the reason I want to do this is that it's on an accelerated time frame. The highlights of the modification to the application is that the new TA funding, which is transportation alternatives, and to give you a project that, there's 2 projects actually that we're currently in progress with right now, is the multi-purpose trail from Severance through the fairgrounds that comes onto Main Street, and then Garber Elementary School or Graber Elementary School. Those are 2 TA projects that we're currently with. What it's changed, and the reason it's changed, is now it's called a FAST, F-A-S-T Act bill by the federal government. It's a 5-year bill, and that's where this funding comes from. All projects will be treated as Federal Highway Administration projects. What happens, or what does that mean? That means that, like on, say, the Streetscapes project, that's an FHWA project. You have to pay prevailing wage to the workers. So the wage cost goes up for your contractual services. There's also enhanced inspection services. So the cost of the project itself actually escalates compared to, say, a KDOT funding project or a city executed project. What they've done now is they've included 5 categories for this transportation alternative funding. And where safe routes to school used to be a separate portion, it is now lumped within those 5 categories. And it competes with every other project that is submitted. So it's no longer standalone. There's $18 million in funding. The funding that is planned now, there's $11 million planned to be funded and let in 2017. Then there's another $7 million in TA funding for 2018 projects.
Is that statewide, Bruce?
Yes, sir, that's statewide. The only 2 municipalities that will not be competing for the TA projects for that funding is the city of Kansas City and the city of Wichita, because they have MPOs and apparently special. Yeah, but everybody else is in that mix. It's a fast-track submittal process. The completed application has to be in Topeka by July the 7th. And it's a very intense application. There's a tremendous amount of documentation that has to go in the application itself. KDOT intends to visit the sites for the applicants in July and September. So they're getting the applications on July and 7th. They're spreading them out on the table, and they plan to hit 3 to 5 a day from July through September. They're going to award the projects in November of 2017. KDOT is going to let all the projects, so we will not be letting the projects ourselves like we typically do for in-house projects, but they'll be let through KDOT representatives. And the projects are based on the federal fiscal year, which is October 1 through September 30th. So we're going to go ahead and, being optimistic, we're going to go ahead and get funding for a project, and it'll be then let in 2018. But it's going to be in that federal funding year. That's the reason that they mentioned that. Again, time is of the essence. I met with Matt Messina yesterday morning after he concluded the meeting. Matt has been instrumental with me, because I went way outside the box and taken the multi-purpose trail from 23rd Avenue between Severance and Plum Street through the state fairgrounds. It's state-owned property, and it's been a real enjoyable task, but he's been on my side and backed me, and so that's come to fruition. I'm very excited about that. He's very excited about that. One of the projects that I was considering, and I bring this up to have you guys think about it too, because I don't want to make decisions all on my own, and I'll talk to Brian and Justin and others, but continuing that link over to the Washington Street corridor. And Matt was very energetic about that. And in that Washington Street corridor, I asked him about treatment, surface treatments. They like concrete. They like concrete. They don't want asphalt or stuff like that, which is fine. I talked about some traffic calming ideas, some bulb outs, maybe some small circulars or diversions to slow traffic for bicycles. That's all applicable in the funding, and he was excited about that. So I merely bring this up to leave with you folks to think about projects that you might be interested in. Again, they're transportation alternative projects. They don't have to tie to the system. They're safe routes to school. They're bicycle. They're multi-purpose trail. If there's also a scenic and environmental and historical portion, but if you'd be kind enough, put that in the thinking caps and let Mr. Deerdoff.
But we'd have to have the proposal submitted by July.
July the 7th, yes, ma'am.
We do. Well, I assume this fits into, in some degree, into our comp plan, to some degree.
Very good point. Yes, sir.
The bicycle piece.
We had the bicycle boulevard in this year's
Yeah.
budget. It was cut
Yeah.
and moved, or whatever you want to say. And it's again in the 218 that we're going to hand to you, or maybe we already have. So we'll be talking about that as well. And the bicycle boulevard, as Bruce mentions, a lot of different things there. So
Yeah.
that would be a good project to submit.
Going down Washington.
Yeah.
That's all I've got. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bruce.
Thanks,
Something to
Bruce.
think about.
Thank you, Bruce.
All right, I think we're going to now go to report of city officials. Nancy, how about you?
Nothing. Glad to be back.
Okay, glad to have you back.
Yeah.
You betcha. Good to see you here. Steve, anything?
If you haven't, travel Poplar between 11th and 17th.
Yeah.
The College Grove neighborhood, I think it was just last weekend, if I recall, did their painting across Poplar at those two intersections.
Crosswalk, yeah.
Looks nice.
Yeah, it does.
I hope that it holds up well, but it certainly does a nice job in addition to the street toppers of identifying the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And if you travel the street, you can't, unless your eyes are closed, you can't miss it.
Right.
Your eyes better not be closed.
Good. Dave, how about you?
I'm just glad to have our full complement of council back with us, and one addition.
In one edition, yeah.
Gee, you guys didn't, I mean, you
Five
know.
and a half, huh?
I hope we didn't ruin anything while you were out.
We thought maybe you'd get power hungry.
And how about you, Mama Jade?
Nothing, just good to be back.
All right, glad to have you back as well. So just one other item here. They're beginning to get the word out on the grand opening of the Rice Park Splash Pad.
Yep.
Correct.
Which is, I think maybe you all have received the same invite on Friday, May 26th at 10:30. I remember that was one of the first projects that we were exposed to, Jade and I think, back in 2013.
Yeah.
Was the funding of all of that and the different lives that it took on, but it is now a reality. So on at Rice Park, Friday, May 26th at 10:30. So.
Yep.
Very good.
And John Deerdoff, how about you, John?
Just a couple of things, Mayor, Council. First, just a reminder, next Tuesday, May 23rd at 8:30 will be our first budget workshop, if you will. In front of you in the blue book is the topic of that first meeting, which is our capital improvements program and our equipment replacement program. And so our plan that day is just to kind of go through, through each of those projects, just to, be able to answer questions or address questions you might have with some of those projects. And, from a management side, we have not, reduced funding in any of the projects as of yet until we get down to knowing kind of where we're at, and then we'll revisit some of those. But it's really for that. We're also going to spend a little bit of time at that meeting to talk about the tax lid and what that implication specifically is as it relates to our budget as we go forward. And that'll be the first part of that meeting. So. Secondly, just wanted to follow up, and I hate to keep throwing stuff at you guys that weren't on the agenda, but we had the conversation last week on the Welcome Channel, and I think they're needing some answers maybe from us as to what we're thinking about in 2017. 18 is a whole nother budget discussion, but consideration of whether we want to reinstitute all of that or a portion of that funding for the 2017 Welcome Channel program. And you guys heard the report, and so, if you're not comfortable making that decision today, I certainly understand that, but I think Martha's looking for some direction.
Some answers, yeah.
Yeah. And just a reminder, that was $13,000 that we had funded in the past.
Well, we did have a good discussion, and we had Martha Slater here to give an overview of the history of the Welcome Channel, and that was helpful. It was beneficial. It was long overdue. I think going forward, I think it certainly got our attention, as well as certainly got her attention, that at some point, if we're going to continue to fund the Welcome Channel, we need a formal contract. Because it's kind of been a hybrid out there with really no direct contractual arrangement with the city. So, guys, let me just put something on the table, and then you can discuss it one way or the other if you're okay with that. So,
Sure.
Obviously, a year ago, when we were going through the budget process, this was one of the items that was deleted from 2017 funding. And I think we were all kind of uncertain in terms of who was responsible for it, how the funding was made up, all of those elements. And kind of by default, the Welcome Channel fell off. And obviously, I think we learned something from there that I'm sure Martha Slater has learned something that she needed to pay a little closer attention to, because I think it caught her off guard as well.
Yeah.
So, thus the meeting last week with her, and I think that was productive. And I've been a little bit mixed in terms of the original Welcome Channel and what it was original intent was. That originally it was a visitor-driven type of a thing, but I think it's become more than that, as perhaps in part a service to the city of Hutchinson in helping market to our residents who are on cable all the events and the activities that we have. And I've looked at it the last few days, and she has made some upgrades to it. And I thought it was stale. That's the word I give it. And but I think she has made some effort to make some improvements to it. So I think we certainly got her attention to that, and that's okay. So with that, guys, I'd like to just put on the table that for the balance of 2017, that we would, first of all, if we would agree to funding this, that we would have a contract between First Generation and the City of Hutchinson through December of 2017. And I would recommend that we would fund this at a level of 2017 of $6,500. That would be half. But basically, we would have the contractual service for a 6-month period, which would be equivalent to the $6,500. So, guys, for discussion purposes, I just put that on the table, and then you can react otherwise.
I like the idea. One of the things that crossed my mind was the funding amount, and it would give me an opportunity to see some more activity on the Welcome Channel. Also, maybe some opportunity for some other entities to get involved in the funding process as well. So I would be open to that.
Yeah, I can concur with that. I mean, having been home for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, you see a lot of television, and I think updating some of the stuff that is aired. I mean, I haven't really been watching the Welcome Channel per se, but you catch snippets on their marketing on other channels, and it needs to be updated. It needs to be refreshed, and I think maybe this would be a good way to start. And I like the fact that she's proposing extending it into other venues, such as Facebook, the whole social media world. So
interesting. I was thinking about the 6,500 as well, but not necessarily because we've got a half a year left. I was looking at that as a full 2017 funding.
Yeah, for 2000. Yeah, for.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Sure.
mine wasn't based on because we've got a half a year left, but rather just that
It all
funding.
depends on how you
Yeah.
look at it.
And maybe that's what you had in mind there as well. My leaning right now, may change, is to look at that as kind of a top dollar for 2018 as well, but we'll deal with that in a different setting. So anyway, I support your proposal.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Okay.
I think that it might have been better for us to give her the opportunity to have that conversation with us before we cut it. And since we didn't do that, it would make sense to give her another chance this year. So.
Right.
And having a contract, it would.
And having a contract, to me, that's paramount.
And I'm also going to reach out, because I believe I'm correct, I think she confirmed that the chamber cut their funding and requested
yeah, I
they
think it was.
do something like we've done, revisit that. That might help ease the pain of our cut a little bit. So, I mean, the chamber to me ought to be the one entity that is the lead in this whole thing. But
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. When does the new chamber person take over?
June 1, I believe, or thereabouts.
Pretty
Okay.
soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very soon.
Here
Yeah.
before we know it.
Yeah.
Okay, that gives me a little bit of direction.
Do we need any
Well,
further action on that?
I suppose that's probably a little more of a affirmative, so we probably ought to take a.
What is
take
that
action.
coming out of, just the general fund?
It'll be non-departmental general fund, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. With that, do we have a motion?
To adjourn? So moved?
To approve this?
Let's go ahead and do that.
Oh, we still need a motion, okay.
I believe we need a motion on this welcome channel.
I'll move that we approve funding for 2017 in the amount of $6,500 for first-generation video welcome channel with the condition of having a contract in place.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call roll.
Pyros Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Lang?
Yes. John, other items?
I guess I wasn't done yet there. I think, Mayor, that's all I had. Thank you. I'm glad you reminded everybody about the ribbon cutting on Friday for the splash.
That's next
Appreciate
week,
that.
correct?
That's
Yeah.
next week, the 26th.
Oh, 26th, okay.
26th.
May
Yeah.
26th is what this says.
That's
All
all I
right,
have.
we ready to adjourn?
Ask Jade.
So moved.
Motion and a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call roll.
Pyros Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Lang?
Yes.
You know, you look at the agenda and you're like, oh, this will be a short meeting.
Right.
And here